The Shroud of Turin is this amazing relic. At bottom, it's a piece of cloth. It shows a very faint sort of image of a crucified man.
The Shroud of Turin is one of the most examined artifacts in human history, not because of faith alone, but because of the mysteries it holds that leave scientists puzzled. In 1978, a team of experts was granted rare access to study it up close. Among them was Barrie Schwortz, the team's official documentary photographer, who thought his images would help reveal medieval fraud. But to Schwortz's dismay, they revealed more mysteries that couldn't be explained by scientists. What were these mysteries that scientists can't explain? Stick with us to find out. The mystery scientists can't explain. Our team went to Turin to answer one simple question. How was the image on the Shroud of Turin formed? And we can only tell you it's not a painting, not a photograph, not a scorch, not a rubbing. We know of no mechanism to this day that can make an image with the same chemical and physical properties as the image on the shroud. These were Barrie Schwortz's words after taking close-up photographs of the Shroud of Turin. But that's not all he's got to say. The Shroud of Turin has been passed from decade to decade, with scientists trying to explain its mysteries. But with each scientific study, the scientists only get more confused and are left with further questions. The Shroud of Turin has been kept away from the public and is located in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy. In 1978, some scientists formed the Shroud of Turin Research Project, known as the STURP Group, and went to Turin to understand the shroud better. Among them was Barrie Schwortz, a professional photographer who was the team's official documenting photographer. Schwortz had been taking photographs since his early career, making a living by capturing images for research purposes. But far from his expertise was religious artifacts. He never got involved in any of that. This avoidance came naturally because he was the grandson of an Orthodox rabbi who raised him in the Jewish tradition. However, in 1978, he received an invitation to join the STRUP team as their official photographer. Schwortz hesitated. He said he wondered if someone who was raised as an Orthodox Jew should be part of such a Christian project, as the Shroud of Turin was a Christian relic. Schwortz asked Don Lin, who recruited him, why he wanted a Jew on the team when he could find another Christian photographer. Interestingly, Lin told him, "You don't think God wouldn't want one of his chosen people on our team?" And so Schwortz joined the group. He expected to go, take some pictures, and come back home. But little did he know he was going to get himself into something his mind could never grasp, something that would affect his entire career, transforming him from a freelance photographer to one of the leading voices on the Shroud of Turin. Schwortz said in one of his interviews that he was convinced that the photograph of the Shroud of Turin showed a medieval painting when he went to Italy, where they spent 5 days conducting a thorough examination of the shroud. Barrie photographed every detail of the Turin. He documented every test, every angle, every inch of the cloth under different lighting conditions. He was doing what he'd always done, creating a precise visual record for scientific analysis. But then Schwortz began to notice some unexplainable things as he took the pictures, and he began to ask himself questions he couldn't answer, questions whose answers defied conventional understanding. Schwortz first noticed that the shroud image, which was believed to be an image of Jesus' face on the fabric, didn't show characteristics of any painted image or anything he could fully explain. Nothing seemed to make sense at this point to Barrie, while many, like Barrie Schwortz, had initially believed that the Shroud of Turin was a clever forgery of painted artistry from the Middle Ages, as the Shroud of Turin had been dated back to the 13th century, long after Jesus' death. But staring at it through his camera lens proved that there were so many mysteries behind the cloth. While Schwortz never made a statement in Turin, as he was there as a photographer meant to document, not theorize about the cloth, he kept his observations to his heart. But he soon began talking about it, as he couldn't keep it to himself. The shroud is a test of faith, not a test of science. There comes a point with the shroud where the science stops, and people have to decide for themselves. This statement made by Schwortz guided his entire view about the Shroud of Turin. He emphasized that there were certain things science could never explain, no matter how hard they tried to make meaning of it, and that was the Shroud of Turin, which consists of an image that was produced by a dead human body. To Schwortz, science wasn't advanced enough to ever explain the phenomenon. However, Schwortz held his orthodox beliefs still, as he stated that the image was a pre-resurrection image, not a post-resurrection image. He believed that the shroud showed evidence of the death and crucifixion of Jesus, but not his resurrection. Despite seeing the mysteries of the Shroud of Turin, Barrie Schwortz didn't see it as scientific proof that Jesus resurrected from the dead, but he knew it was a mystery that deserved deeper investigation. More discoveries on the Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin, also known as the Holy Shroud, is a length of linen cloth that bears a faint sepia-colored image of the front and back of a naked man. The man had been laid on one half of the cloth and the other half folded over him. While the image on the cloth can be missed if you don't look closely, with enhanced photographic techniques, the image on the shroud is, however, believed to be an image of Jesus of Nazareth, as the details are consistent with the traditional depictions of Jesus. Jesus, a spiritual being who holds different meanings to different religions. To the Muslims, he's a noble prophet and messenger of Allah. To the Jews, he is a false claimant of the Messiah. And to many Christians, he is the Messiah, God himself. There have been different interpretations attached to him. But what does this Shroud of Turin reveal to us? Keep watching as we unveil more on the Shroud of Turin. Several researchers and historians believe the shroud to be the same burial cloth of Jesus that was wrapped around his body after the crucifixion. The shroud isn't the only cloth that has been claimed to have been used to cover the body of Jesus in history. All of these claims have been set aside since 1898, when photographer Secondo Pia took a photo of the shroud. He examined it carefully and was shocked to see a detailed image of a face on the shroud, which was hidden from the naked eye. The image was believed to be of Jesus. Skeptics of the shroud, however, disagreed with him and said the shroud dated back to the 13th or 14th century, and Jesus' death had been before this time. However, after further investigations, Dr. Jeremiah Johnston disagreed with the critics and proved further that the Shroud of Turin was actually used for Jesus' burial. Dr. Johnston explained that history speaks of the image of Edessa, which tells a story of a cloth imprinted with Jesus' likeness that was taken from Jerusalem to Edessa to show King Abgar V and convince him to become a Christian. The shroud was then kept in Edessa for years. Johnston believed the image of Edessa is the same as the Shroud of Turin. However, no proof to support this claim exists. Further supporting claims by Johnston to dispute that the Shroud of Turin was a 700-year-old forgery were the pollen spores on the cloth that could help trace the route of the shroud between Jerusalem and Italy. Interestingly, the pollen spores on the shroud were traced to be from Jerusalem, Edessa, Constantinople, Greece, up to France, and then Italy. This added more depth to Johnston's claims. In 1988, a shocking discovery was also made that helped to raise more questions concerning the shroud. Carbon dating showed that the shroud was from the 1260s to 1390s. This claimed that the shroud was a 13th century forgery, unlike what Jeremiah Johnston had claimed. This carbon dating result proved that the shroud couldn't have been used for Jesus' burial. However, upon the results, other scholars disagreed with it and said the carbon dating result was wrong, and they gave their reasons. 1. Instead of using 7 research labs to test the shroud, only 3 labs were used, and this wasn't accepted, as they could have made a mistake, and mistakes are not unusual in scientific testing. 2. Only a little piece of the shroud was taken to run the test, and the sample was taken from a specific section of the cloth, which reportedly has water stains and also sustained fire damage. This is believed to have messed up the results. But that's not all. The cloth that was sampled was also found to have cotton, even though the entire cloth was made of pure linen. With all of these inconsistencies, how is it possible that they had found an accurate dating of the shroud then? This discovery of cloth contamination was proved by Raymond Rogers, an expert in thermodynamics and one of the original members of the STURP team, who actually set out to prove that the shroud was a hoax. Raymond had been studying the Shroud of Turin samples they had gotten in 1978 for years, but it wasn't until 2005, after analyzing the piece of the cloth he had with him, that he discovered something shocking. Rogers discovered that there was cotton in the shroud piece, and there wasn't cotton in the rest of the shroud, as it was made with pure linen. This discovery proved that the part of the shroud which was tested with the carbon dating had been messed up with and had been repaired by nuns after it had been damaged. This raised a lot of questions on the carbon dating results in 1988 and left everyone asking, is the Shroud of Turin a medieval forgery? Let's find out. Hidden dimensions on the image that shouldn't exist. In 1976, before Barrie Schwortz followed the STURP, 2 scientists had already made a bigger discovery. They ran photographs of the shroud through a VP8 image analyzer, a machine developed for NASA to interpret flat photographs of planetary terrain and convert them into topographical models. The results, however, shocked them, as they produced a perfect image of a human body. This shouldn't have been possible. When you put a regular photograph through a VP8 analyzer, you get a flat, meaningless image. When you put a painting through one, you get distorted results because of the artist's use of light and shadow. But this result was unlike anything they had seen before. When STURP team members examined the shroud under high magnification, they discovered the image exists only on the topmost surface of the cloth. It didn't penetrate the fabric. It's sitting on the fabric. This wasn't expected, as paint and dye always soak into clothes. But this image on the shroud doesn't. The image on the Shroud of Turin is a black and white digital image made of pixels, except this was made long before computers existed. The STURP team examined the image carefully and realized they didn't find brush marks or rubbing marks. It was almost like it wasn't made with any tool. No one from the medieval age could have made this. Even in modern times, it would be harder to create something this extraordinary. But the findings didn't end here. There were also bloodstains on the shroud, real bloodstains from a human. While the image properties puzzled scientists, the blood on the shroud presented its own set of mysteries and left the scientists with more questions than answers. Tests identified the blood type to be AB positive. Dr. Alan Adler, a biochemist, confirmed that the person who had been wrapped with the cloth had died a traumatic death, as he saw the presence of bilirubin, a bile pigment which occurs when someone has experienced severe physical trauma before death. But here's where things get complicated. The blood and the image appear to have formed at different times, through different processes. The blood was clearly stained on the cloth by direct contact, that is, when the person was covered with the cloth. The image, however, looks as though it has been projected on the cloth, formed without the cloth touching the body, as the image stayed at the topmost layer of the fabric and doesn't appear where the bloodstains were. One question ran in the minds of the scientists. How did contact stains and non-contact images exist on the same piece of fabric? This was a mystery yet to be unveiled. The blood pattern stains on the cloth are also a mystery, as they appear to be forensically accurate to an astonishing degree, which shows it actually wrapped Jesus' body. Let's take a look at these blood patterns. The shroud showed what appeared to be wrist wounds, which showed that the person was nailed on his wrist and not on his palm, as we always imagined Jesus had died. The bloodstains were in a position that showed the wrist wounds were from a crucifixion. But that's not all. Scattered across the back and chest of the Shroud of Turin are over 200 wounds on the back and 172 on the front. These were gotten from the result of the flogging of Jesus with a whip, just like it was the Roman tradition to flog their prisoners with a whip that had 3 tips. The distribution of wounds shows 2 men flogging from different angles, just as Roman records describe the practice. A gash on the abdomen between ribs 5 and 6 also corresponds to the crucifixion of Jesus, where a Roman soldier pierced Jesus with a spear, which resulted in blood and water gushing forth. The details on the shroud are all anatomically correct, with the history supporting the death of Jesus, especially the wrist points. There was no way a medieval forger would have known that Jesus was nailed on his wrist and not on his palm. The Romans didn't document their crucifixion methods, and no medieval artist had access to how crucifixion worked. Yet the shroud got it all right, while all the medieval artistic representations of Jesus' crucifixion got it wrong, as it showed Jesus being nailed on his palm, not his wrist. While this discovery answers some questions, the puzzle doesn't end there. Since the victim who was wrapped with the cloth was bleeding, you'd expect that when he stands up, resurrects. Like the Bible said Jesus resurrected, there'll be a smear of bloodstains on the cloth. However, there's no smear of bloodstains on the Shroud of Turin. It's as if the person just stopped being there, probably disappeared out of the shroud. This isn't just a curiosity, but evidence of something unexplainable, and the Shroud of Turin proves this, as there has not been any explanation on how the victim left the shroud. All of these discoveries have gotten scientists more puzzled than ever, as they have no explanation for all of these findings. And no wonder Barrie Schwortz said they found something in the Shroud of Turin that scientists can't explain. What do you think of Schwartz's words on the Shroud of Turin? What do you also think of the Shroud of Turin? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.